President Joe Biden's top media buying firm is reportedly helping Big Pharma's efforts to tank the Democrats' already tampered drug pricing legislation, as well as target Senate Democrats up for re-election come November. Here to expand is editor-at-large at Jacobin and founder of the Daily Poster, former senior advisor to the Bernie Sanders campaign, David Sirota. David, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So what did you guys find?
There's a company called Canal Partners Media, which is essentially Joe Biden's top media buying firm. In other words, it helps the Biden campaign place its campaign ads. So it's one of Joe Biden's big consultants. And they have simultaneously been placing giant ad buys for a series of pharmaceutical industry connected front groups, ads that essentially try to stop the already weakened drug pricing bill that Senate Democrats are moving through the Congress, or at least is in the Congress. I'm not sure it's moving through just yet. But these ads essentially are trying to stop drug pricing legislation that the Democrats are pushing. So you have a situation where Joe Biden's media consultants are essentially helping pharma demonize Joe Biden's purported healthcare and pharmaceutical agenda.
Unless that's not really Joe Biden's agenda, right? I mean, it could just be something that he says.
Right. I mean, I always use the term purported agenda. I mean, there is this question of how much of this, how much of the White House and congressional back and forth is performance art. How much is it that Joe Biden has put forward an agenda that he says it's his agenda, but that they know that there's going to be in the negotiation something or many things that are going to ultimately be cut out of it. But I think in this case, the story really is you have it's a spotlight into a culture in Democratic politics where it's basically okay, apparently, for the consultant class to essentially be working for Democratic politicians, but also getting paid by the interests that are opposing the Democrats' purported agenda.
Do they even try to disguise it as, well, we're looking out for Biden because this makes good political sense or something like that? Or you're going to say it's a pure sort of financial motivation or a cover for corporate interests that aren't politically appealing?
To my mind, it's really about a mercenary culture, that politics has become such a business at the consulting class level that there really aren't principles or values at play at all. And in this case, there doesn't even seem to be party loyalty at play. It is just purely a mercenary kind of culture. I mean, again, remember, these ads, they're not just generically saying that they don't want this pharmaceutical drug pricing bill. They're actually targeting specific Democratic senators with this message in advance of the midterm elections. So in a sense, you have Democratic consultants making it harder for essentially, or helping interest groups make it harder for Democrats to retain the Senate.
David, do you know where these ads are being run? Like which television stations or networks?
We haven't figured out all of the different media markets, but it is a big ad buy. It is certainly a it is not a sort of performative ad buy. It is a real ad buy.
Right. And you see this phenomenon also with pollsters, who do a lot of polling consulting for candidates, and then also will poll on behalf of big oil on what messages they ought to use to undercut climate legislation. Yet the Democratic Party does have mechanisms to deal with these types of conflicts. If you remember, after the 2018 midterms, the DCCC said, look, if you work for a primary challenger to an incumbent Democrat, don't come calling to us. You're not doing any business with the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party does know how to police disloyalty. Has there ever been an effort to police this type of disloyalty, or is this actually inside the Beltway considered not that disloyal?
I mean, Ryan, you've made such a really good point. The point that the policing of the consultant class apparently applies to consultants who dare to work with progressive candidates who might challenge Democratic incumbents. But that policing doesn't extend to questions of corporate influence, questions of which big business groups are actually opposing the party's purported agenda. And I think in that dichotomy, you really see what the party thinks is important and what the party thinks really isn't important. And what the party thinks is important, first and foremost, is protecting incumbents. And it doesn't think it's important, and that may be putting it mildly, it doesn't think it's important to say that business interests can't essentially, that consultants can't work with business interests to demonize Democrats. Mm-hmm. So I think that really shows really what the party prioritizes and how the consulting class culture really is complicit in a lot of ways with the corporate interests that are trying to stop the Democratic Party's, and again, I'll underscore it, its purported agenda.
Right. And beyond,
yeah, and I mean, to me, Democrats absolutely know what's going on. I mean, they know that this is happening. So it's not like this is happening behind their back and then they're going to find out by watching this and say, oh no, like how dare they? It sounds to me like they're playing both sides. I mean, my feeling on this is, look, if you're Joe Biden, if you're the Democrats, you're looking at, it's very popular to want to reduce drug pricing across America. That is a very popular idea on both sides of the aisle. So that is popular. They have to say, well, that's what we want to do. We're going to go into the office and this is what we're going to achieve. Knowing that they're also taking money from the big corporations, from big pharma. They're not actually going to achieve this. If they even try to start to achieve it, it will be chipped away. It'll end up being meaningless. It'll only be on certain drugs and not others. And so then, I guess to kind of give them maybe a little bit of leeway on this, you would then want at least the voters to not feel like you were a total failure, I suppose. So maybe then you would go and say, well, maybe then what we need to do is allow messaging to get out there to change the voters' mind on this. Maybe, give them the brainwash messaging from Big Pharma to say, you don't really want this because this is going to cut innovation, right? And that's what they always try to claim. So then maybe the voters won't take it out on you in midterms or in the general election as much because they're also feeling now because of these advertisements that, we didn't really need that.
No, that's right. I mean, that's why I go back to the idea of performance art. I mean, there is a level of performance art, or this raises the question about performance art, that what we're seeing with the Democrats saying, hey, listen, we're really pushing this drug pricing bill, and then our consulting class is actually working with the pharmaceutical industry opponents of this bill to essentially soften the political terrain for us to, right, for the party to then surrender and or retreat, that all feels a little bit like a rigged game, like performance art, like the Washington Generals versus the Harlem Globetrotters, where the outcome of the game is already predetermined. And I think that's what makes people cynical about politics. I mean, ultimately, I think the public actually senses that this is going on.
Yeah.
Well, David, thank you so much for joining us. Great reporting.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And congrats on Don't Look Up. It continues to dominate the Netflix rankings. It's pretty exciting.
Thanks a ton. I honestly, I cannot believe how big a response it's gotten, but thanks again for saying that.
I liked it. I watched it. It was really good.
Thank you.
I haven't watched it yet. My wife loved it.
Well, give me your unvarnished opinion the next time we're on, okay?
Okay.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you then. And we'll have more Rising right after this.